Welcome, everyone, to episode 14 of How to Do Psychedelics. Today, my guest is David Mirsky. And as an introduction, Mr. Mirsky has earned his Bachelor of Science in Marketing from the Stern School of Business at New York University. He earned his JD from Brooklyn Law School and has been admitted to New York Bar for over 25 years. David practiced commercial litigation as a trial lawyer in the greater New York City area before relocating to Arizona, where he transitioned into the microcap public company market space. David has been the CEO of Sibanak since 2017, spearheading the company's entry into the plant medicine and consciousness sector, where the company has launched the Starwalker Cafe, a multimedia platform incorporating education, wellness tourism, and plant medicine products. David has recently launched his social media channel, The Meru Sky, where his content is focused on his experiences with psychedelics and the lessons he has learned. Welcome to the show, David. Anything you want to add to that introduction?
No, I think you covered everything. Well said. It's interesting to hear that I go back so long. So it makes me feel old, but that's okay.
Yeah. Well, now that our audience has a bit of an idea of who the man is in front of me and what he's doing in the world, as we do, we're going to start with David sharing his most meaningful or impactful story of working with plant medicines or psychedelics in a way that helped shape him on the path, put him on the path to become this person who has transformed so much. So let's have it, David.
I would say that I guess in the overall scheme of things, like to answer the big questions and on my journey, one experience comes to mind that I think is not my first one. I think my first one, which I'd love to talk about, sort of my entry into the space. But I think in one way, the most impactful was a DMT experience that I had from a great guy, and it was completely unanticipated. It was someone actually, I was an Aya shaman who I was looking to sit with, and we were having a discussion about how he conducts ceremony. And I had asked him the question about DMT. And for people that don't know, dimethyltryptamine, which obviously is a key integral part in the ayahuasca brew, but can also be taken on its own in various forms. So he asked me, well, I have some DMT. Would you like to experience that? And I was unprepared for that. But knowing that these opportunities are sometimes divinely, orchestrated, and I decided, yeah, let's do it. So this was completely unanticipated. And when you smoke DMT, people that know, it comes on so fast and so strong. And the transition in consciousness happens in such an impactful way. And I was sat back in this room and all of a sudden essentially go through a light tunnel and come out on the other side to this vibrant uh, colors, like a room. Some people call it like the waiting room. And immediately I was transformed to a place without any light, without really any signs of any kind. It was like I was in a place where I could just feel. And immediately I knew that I was in what I could only describe as heaven. This is how I
Mm-hmm.
described it to myself. What was interesting is that I remained completely intact in terms of my own consciousness and what my personal sense of self was, remained completely intact. And I began to have a conversation with myself, immediately realizing that this was the most blissful, most peaceful, and sense of endless love that I had ever experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And then I became confused when I asked myself why it is that I know this place and that I know that this is where I come from. And I'm talking to myself and saying, how is it that I'm so familiar with this? And had
Mm-hmm.
this immediate sense that I was taking a break from my life, essentially, that I had for the first time experienced that this is the true nature of who I am, and that David, this person on earth, certainly is a part of me, but that I am much greater than this physical being, and that this is where I come from, and that this is where I'm going back to. And
Uh-huh.
had the sense that I really don't want to come back here. But it was such a sense of peace that knowing that when I return, that I know now there is no death. I have experienced that. And I know that where we are all returning to, no matter where we come from, no matter what our religion or our upbringing or our race and all the things that make us different, that we are all the same, that we come from this place and that this is where we're going back to. And I have been able to carry that into everyday life since that experience with this
Hmm.
comfort that I know that we are endless beings.
Beautiful. So to recap that, you had a smoked DMT experience that brought you to this blissful place that you call the waiting room. I've heard this term before. It felt like heaven. And you were what I would call participating in the experience. Like you said, that you were intact. It wasn't like you lost your sense of self, as if you were experiencing yourself in the greater consciousness of things, right? And it felt familiar. It felt like home. This is something I feel people
Yep.
share a lot when they
Yeah.
come to this place, that what we tend to call in this work, when you get there, it's like a primary religious or a primary spiritual experience, our first touch with what we could call God or source or nature. And you understand the nature of life, and that it continues, it goes on, that there is no death. There's something about being here which forever marks you moving forward and forever changes the way you navigate life. Because going to the old adage, well, you can't really appreciate A unless you don't appreciate the opposite of it. And experiences like this bring us as close as we can get to dying, which is the opposite of life in a way, energetically. Because I've had a similar experience. And ever since that day, it's like, wow, it brings so much more levity. And just like with trauma, how that lives in the body, and this is something that people would do good to talk more about, these blissful experiences also live in our body. We can sit down and call upon them. Now, our brains are still wired to remind us of danger and pain and things that look unsafe. It does take a little bit of an exacted effort to recall that. But sit down and meditate and like remember this experience and feel your cells light back up. And so I want you to explain a little more about who you were before this experience and who you were after.
Yeah, I was really, without knowing it, I was seeking something, right? And this had been kind of earlier on my psychedelic journey and on this path in my life. So this is, I'm still in this process. Of course, it's just ever evolving, and we're always learning new things. This was the first time that could I could talk from experience that I have felt this knowing that has permanently changed me because it now is part of my conscious day-to-day experience. And so whether I'm getting a coffee or even more importantly, when I'm waiting in line or doing something that's we really think of as mundane, I have a sense now that each moment in our life is so magical and important, and to try to incorporate this understanding of the true nature of who we are into the mundane and into just sort of what we kind of call the daily grind of things, because that's what takes up so much of our time. We go to work, we do this, we're in traffic, all of these demands that are on us, and we get distracted actually from who we are because we're always doing. So I like to say that the day-to-day life we're always doing because that's what Earth is. We're in this place of action. And that when I've experienced this experience and others similarly in the psychedelic process, that's when I get into just a state of being where
Mm-hmm.
there is nothing. And it's that void that is often referred to. And that's the place where we just exist, where we can just be, where we are the true nature of our expanded consciousness, where nothing really impacts that space, nothing matters, there are no problems, because we realize that that is all trivial, really, and
Mm-hmm.
that, the true importance is, can we just get to that place of being? And that's what I've been able to really incorporate more and more after that.
Mm. A state of being. So being able to come back to being present and not being pulled into the past or the future. That's where everything
Absolutely.
is.
Oh,
And this is
that's
one
where
of the greatest
everything is.
teachings of these works. So
Sorry, yeah.
many people say that psychedelics and plant medicines as tools are very good at showing us what is possible. And so when we get to that place of possibility and we have this feeling of not just being present, but the feeling of having everything, having wholeness, having bliss. This is one of the teachings I received from my mentor over the years. Whenever we're going into ceremony, I'll tell people before we're going in, okay, you have this intention. Great. Try to figure out what it would feel like to have that completed and spend time sitting and absorbing and allowing the feeling of having that. Because the more you cultivate that particular feeling, that emotional frequency, the more that becomes true. And the more whatever it is you want related to this feeling, this emotion, this frequency, energy, and motion, the more it will come to you. This is how this law of attraction thing actually works. And so I want to dive a little bit more into this experience. You said before you shared it that you weren't prepared. And I'm curious, A, what you meant about that, what it would have been like if you felt prepared, like what prepared would have felt like to you. And while it seems like you had a really positive and powerful experience, I want to know if anything about it felt challenging and how you navigated those challenges, if so.
Um, that's a great question. There's a lot in there. So I certainly wasn't prepared to have a psychedelic experience. I was prepared to have a conversation. And so
Mm-hmm.
obviously preparation is important, especially if you're going to have an ayahuasca experience. You have a lot of physical preparation, intentional preparation before that. Um, so I knew I wasn't going to have that. Um, but I really didn't know that I was going to have any experience. So, if someone, it's very trying. That's why they call us psychonauts. And I do believe when you
Yeah.
enter the psychedelic journey, it takes a lot of courage, because it's such a transformational process physically as your consciousness begins to separate from the body. And it can be a daunting process in and of itself. And it can be very threatening to the ego, which is totally normal. And it's something that I've been able to work with and overcome as I've gained some experience to be able to like overcome that monkey mind of, wait, something is happening here and I'm not comfortable. This is not normal. And your ego will really kick in and try hard to try to maintain the status quo. And so it's a lot of the understanding that we're so ingrained into the 3D that we believe so strongly that this is who we are. And so anything that really tries to challenge that, even if it's going to be a great experience for us, becomes very difficult. And so I wasn't prepared for that. And luckily, I think in this event, it was good not to be prepared, because then sort of that fear mechanism, starts to kick in, and some people would be reluctant, right? Which is what keeps people a lot from the experience. So I like to talk about these natural things, because if you think that the process or psychedelics aren't right for you because you have fear, that might not necessarily be so. While they're certainly not for everybody, and I don't recommend experiences, I just talk about my own. And if you're called, is what I like to say, then if you feel called, but you feel like you also have fear, that's okay. That's something to talk through and work
Yeah.
through. Um, so I think in part of this experience, I did experience a little bit of fear, and I was helped along the way. So I'll add a little bit more detail into what happened, because essentially I felt like I was in an area that I just was so unfamiliar with. And as I began to feel this fear, I heard a voice talk to me and essentially put up like a structure, like I was almost in a room, and asked me if I was more comfortable with this. And telepathically or otherwise, I said, yes, that's more comfortable. And I thought to myself, I like this better. It's almost feeling like, you know how like a little puppy sometimes is more comfortable in the kennel, in the crate, because it's a confined space that they know that they're kind of comfortable with. And that
Hmm.
is how I describe how I felt, except that when I looked one way, like I looked off to the side like this, and then I saw complete empty space.
Hmm.
And that shook me a little bit and kicked in a little bit more of the fear response, but I was immediately comforted by that. And when I began then to feel this overwhelming bliss, I was trying to talk to whoever was communicating with me. And I remember saying, this is the most magnificent experience anybody could ever have. And I remember saying, I want to go back and tell people about this. Like I
Yeah.
had this sense that people need to know this. And
Hmm.
then when I said that, I was immediately uh, confronted with this response, which was, you can't explain this to people. This is meant for you. This is meant for you to experience. And
Who said that?
I don't
Was it
know.
okay? It
I
wasn't like the
don't know.
facilitator you were talking to.
No, 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 no.
That's some wise
This was
advice.
this was a conversation I was having to the entity that was formless and shapeless, that I just knew was there and present and looking after me.
Hmm.
And when I said that this sense of love, because I felt the sense of timelessness, I felt what it was like to be born into your mother's arms as like a baby that feels nothing but bliss. There's nothing but pure existence and love in this space. And that's all that it's comprised of. And this sense of peace that there is nothing else, that this is just the nature of who we are at the core of our existence. We are just love. And there's no pressure of any kind there. There's nothing human there. The expansiveness of that was so overwhelming on one hand, but I keep coming back to the sense of peace on the other, that that's all there is, that's all there needs to be. And it became so simple. And this is what I wanted to come back and convey to people. So that's ultimately, in essence, what this experience, number one, gave me personally, but then was very impactful in putting me onto the path of wanting to open this message to anyone else that thinks they're similarly here and want to experience plant medicine and explore their own consciousness, that I
Hmm.
am now called to offer this opportunity
Hmm.
and understanding.
Yeah. And when do you engage in those conversations, carrying this wisdom that you received from this energy, this entity there that was tempering this excitement during the experience, which is very common for people to come out and be like, wow, this is something people need to know about. And there's often a lot of evangelical sort of proselytizing about it, be like, this is the way, let's come and go. And it sounds like you came out with a clear understanding that was for you, for sure. And over time, as you've integrated and absorbed and processed, I imagine you came to some sort of middle path of like, okay, there is a time and place. There is a certain way you can talk about this. And I'm curious, how are you clear on that when the people show up in your life and that you tell about this and that you want to help them walk the path as well?
Yeah, so it's become more intentional over time, because when I first started on this journey, I wanted to talk to as many people as I could. But I quickly realized that this is not meant for everyone at this time, and that
Right.
I was using energy in a little bit of a wasteful way, because I was finding myself trying to convince people that this is there for you. And that if you're stuck in this feeling of, I'm so unhappy with my life and there's nothing out there, and even people saying there's nothing in the afterlife and we're just going to die and we go back to dust and that's the end of us. I felt so
Yeah.
called to say, no,
Right.
there is more out there. I promise you, I have seen it. I am nothing, right? I am nobody, but I have seen this and you can see it too. And whatever that means for me, I want you to see it because I don't want you to be going through this life without understanding that that's there. But this message is just not meant for everyone and they're just not ready for it. And then I started to learn that that's okay and that I'm better served if I conserve my energy, put the message out myself, which is now why I'm doing content for the first time, which I've never done in my life. I never post anything on social media. I never have even till this day about
Hmm.
who David is. And here I am at this restaurant and we're eating this new sandwich and I'm traveling here. I'm on vacation. I've never done that. I don't think I'll ever be interested in doing that. What I do put out is my plant medicine and ayahuasca and psychedelic journeys because these are meant for people that are opening to hear them now. So that's where I'm looking to focus and to talk to people who feel called and they're on this path, but they're not sure how to take the first step. So I feel like my mission now is more of being a bridge to people looking for their own way and open to hearing about that there are these opportunities that can really help them on their path that are safe and that I can tell them a little bit about. Here are sort of the nuts and bolts about what you're really likely to experience and how it will help you as it has helped me integrate that into life. And I'm very intent on communicating that it's all about improving your life here. We're not looking to escape and have these, although mystical experiences that are sometimes indescribable. The real meaning is how do we as humans incorporate that because we're here for a purpose. And so I always want to honor the purpose of being human because we have this magical opportunity to be in time now and to experience whatever the limitations are of the 3D. They are magnificent. To be able to eat like a wonderful apple and smell the newly cut grass and hear the birds chirp and feel what time is and feel what we can accomplish over time through patience and through wisdom and through dedication and sacrifice. Those are things that can only be experienced in the human form. And so I want to honor those things always at the same time. So that's sort of the balance of my message.
Hmm. So what I'm hearing is over time, after you were able to come to terms with this isn't for everyone, there are people that will show up in your life and they'll be curious. And when they show curiosity and they show up to you, then there's a dialogue to be had. Yeah, that's the way
Yeah.
I experienced it for myself too. Like it took me years to get to the point where I wasn't trying to get everyone to come to music festivals with me and like to do mushrooms or MDMA with me. And looking back at it, I'm like, man, that is not the way to do it the way I figured. I got lucky like running through the festival scene and
Yeah.
trying psychedelics for the first few times. Like now it's like, man, you really need to have a pretty good solid community around you and some personal practices and understand a lot of like why are you being drawn to this? Like, what is your big question there around that? So I get that, and I appreciate and follow that same way as well. I'm curious to know more, David, about the time after this particular journey. What was your, as we would say, integration process like? What did it take for you to fully welcome in the lessons and the transformations from this experience and to let it shape your life into what it is now? What were the challenges that you had to go through? And what were the practices that helped you stabilize and do this in a way that was safe?
Yeah. I think um, the the biggest challenge is falling back into old routines and being able to work with those behavioral patterns in a different way. Because people think if they're, even if they have the most magical experience, that somehow they're going to be changed from that experience is wrong from my perspective. You alluded to before that the psychedelics can show us what's possible. And
Hmm.
then from my view, we need to take what we actually know, because we actually are exposed and we have this belief that essentially anything is possible now because we've actually seen a glimpse of it. But as we get back into day to day, how do we reconcile those things? Because, well, Monday morning is going to come in. I had this magical weekend, but now I have to go back to work. And now I'm
Exactly.
getting emails and I'm getting calls and I'm getting the same stuff that's happening. And now how do I put it together? And that's always a challenge. It's still an ongoing challenge, and I'm nowhere near perfection in that process. So I want to communicate to people that we are human. We're not going to change. We're not going to be able to fully understand and grasp the true nature of what is, and that's okay. We need to be happy with that. So, and we need not to judge ourselves with the limitations and when we fall back into these patterns. But what we do have, what psychedelics can give us is a toolbox where I can now go back in when I'm falling back into something that's maybe negative thought patterns, to say, because we can manifest those very well. I always like to say you're a
Hmm.
great manifester, especially when things are going badly. And you can rest assured that when you say, yesterday sucked, today sucked, and I guarantee you tomorrow's going to suck, I'll say you're exactly right. It will, because your manifestation and the energy you're putting out is spot on. And you will be guaranteed to continue to reproduce this process because your frequency remains the same. That's why these like ruts and struggles are very hard to get out of and break, because we don't realize how much we are actually creating them. And I think the one big tool that I've had is to be able to step outside and, number one, recognize that, hey, David, you're doing that thing, right? This is a negative thought pattern. We know how to deal with this now. So now the tool comes out and I can say, let me change my thought pattern. And usually the
Yeah.
best way that the main best tool that I know of that plant medicine has given me that is gratitude, where I can say, okay, if this is bad, that's bad. This, my car, I got a flat tire, ba 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 ba. That's when things get really difficult. And if you can say to yourself, wait a minute, let me like, let me be thankful for what I have right now. Let me start to make a list of the great things I have. That is such a powerful tool to
Yeah.
counteract, the stuff that we can't control that's happening. That's like the main thing. And it's so ubiquitous. If you can just pull this out anywhere. And I like to start the day with that, like, things that we so much take for granted. Like, hey, uh, can you walk? Oh, you have legs and you can walk? Do you know how grateful you should be for that? And this is the kind of thing that we take for granted. You have your health, because we have all these thousand problems that anybody can just rattle off right now. When your health gets challenged, you've got one problem,
Hmm.
and life becomes very simple,
Hmm.
very direct at that point. So let's just be grateful for the things we have, because it will stave off whatever the negativity is. And just putting yourself in that sense of gratitude is so important and impactful to be able to reverse the negative course of things. Because like
Hmm.
this life is like an ocean. You can't control all the waves, right? But we do have some control, and we can set the course. We can change the course,
That's
even
right.
though it's imperceptible, but you have to have confidence that it can be changed. And the best way to start that is gratitude.
There's a lot of good points there. This is the same analogy I use for my transformation too. Like the first time I took ayahuasca, it just felt like the course of the ship of my life just changed a bit. And I was able to stay that course by gathering lots of support in my life and being curious about what was going on and developing my own practices. And gratitude is really what it comes back to. You say something like being grateful for having legs or having your health, and that can sound kind of mundane or trite, but, and I'm sure you've had an experience like this, when you're in these blissful states with the medicine, you can feel the gratitude for the most simple things around you. You can just be sitting there with a flower and be entirely at peace, or just feel the beauty of what it is to be in your body, to move it, to marvel at your hands and the exquisite masterpiece that a human being is. And we get to carry that back into our lives. And this again goes back to that point. This is why gratitude works so well. This is why journaling works so well. It brings our attention to the things that we don't naturally put our attention on, which is what is working, what has worked. If it's in the past, it's not something that the reptilian aspect of our brain is still paying attention to. It's trying to keep us alive still. And this is the beneficent job of the ego, which is not to be pushed down or made wrong. It's like it's here to keep us alive in this world so we can continue to enjoy the full breadth and depth of all the human experience. But there is still some work that needs to be done, for better or worse. I'm not concerned
Yeah.
or wondering as to why these practices are necessary, but they help. It always comes back down to gratitude and however we can feel that. Some people like to write about their lives in journal. Some like to sing. Some like to do yoga. Some like to sit around the fire. All of these things give me gratitude, but it takes an effort. And I strongly feel without that, whatever it is that came to you in your experiences is going to be fleeting, unless it was incredibly painful and traumatic, and then the body remembers that. But
Yeah.
we want to hold on to it all and make sense of it all. And so it sounds to me from what you shared that your recapitulation process after this DMT experience was a rather smooth one. Am I getting that right?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was completely blissful, and you know, if I in all of my experiences, I mean, I don't think I've ever felt like I never had that again. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
that most direct sense of just timelessness and completeness and real understanding of who I who I am as a soul being.
Yeah.
That is probably number one, which is why I brought that out. I mean, among so many other just amazing experiences that have helped me more directly, but that was in the total summary of it. Like nothing actually has helped me more.
Yeah. So let's flip the script a bit. Tell me about the most challenging, painful, or harrowing experience you've had with a plant medicine or a psychedelic.
Ooh, there are a number. There are the first one that comes to mind was ayahuasca, and the theme of this experience was presence. This
Mm,
was I kind of tend to theme my experiences. Here's the main takeaway from that. I don't know if that will continue as I get more experience, but the ones I've had have just been so meaningful that I can go back and feel going through each one. So this one was so physically taxing as ayahuasca can be. I mean, I think I lost 10 pounds, essentially, water overnight,
yep.
where I had eaten lightly that day. And so when I got into the experience, I never throughout had the purging experience, but the entire group that night was in the bathroom, and that's kind of what it was confined to. And it was like for hours though. And what I then experienced was a shift from immense kind of heat to like unimaginable cold.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
back and forth and back and forth. Like I felt like I like jumped in the pool and it was like 2000 degrees and I'm sitting in this room just dripping like in this heat that just radiating out of me, sweating and just pouring out. And then a few minutes later, I felt like I was in a freezer and chilled to the bone. Like actually everywhere about me is just like in freezing, like slight pain, freezing. And then I would go back again. And this back and forth combined with the bathroom took such a physical toll on me, excuse me, that by the end, I was appreciative of the simple state of being, where I was actually more or less fully returned to this state of being, this consciousness, but with a peace because I felt a sense of relief that I appreciated just the moment of being able to be where I could have been in the street and I would have been in complete bliss, not caring or knowing if I have clothes on, if there's a million people walking around me, because I finally understood the peacefulness of what the present moment is. And it came from this real physical experience, but that has what I was able to take away from that really challenging journey. The other thing that happened in the middle of that journey was I was very uncomfortable at one point, and I was, back and forth through all of these kind of temperature changes, and I was trying to sit up and change my position to get some kind of comfort. And then I felt like maybe I was going to purge, but I couldn't. And you kind of get those dry heaves sometimes that you'll experience. And then kind of felt like an overwhelming heaviness, an energy that I had never experienced before. It felt very physical, very uncomfortable, and very unfamiliar. And two things actually came out of that were I would like to actually tell people. The first was that at the height of this discomfort, a vision that I kind of think was like, it almost seemed like it was a portrait, like a floating portrait, came from way back in the distance and then came like I felt like a foot in front of me, and it was Adolf Hitler.
Hmm.
And I had no idea how to process that, and I didn't know how to process it or even what to really make of it until maybe 2 years after, when I had a conversation about the experience with the medicine woman who was overseeing my Aya journey, in that particular one. And I said, listen, I had this crazy experience and I don't know where it came from. And I felt this unbelievable heaviness and I saw Hitler. And so I was brought up and raised Jewish, but I have no direct connection to the Holocaust or even family. So no direct experience there. And she said to me, um, I, I can't believe 2 years have passed and we haven't had this conversation, but a lot of Jews encounter Hitler in ayahuasca.
Yeah.
And she told me
Hmm.
that also Germans
Yep.
also have the similar experience. And that was really astounding to me. And then raised just even more questions about who are we? What is our tie, even generationally, so that we could have this kind of experience in ayahuasca that I have no physical reference to and no idea actually how to process that in this life. And still don't have answers to what that was. I was able to feel this immense heaviness and this energy, but it's
What did it
just
feel like?
it felt like uh, it's hard for me to put words to it. It was, if I when we're talking about this bliss, this heavenly bliss, this was the opposite of that. This was like the
Hmm.
darkest form of energy that I've ever known. Um, it was gloom, you know. It was it was something I would hope, like, in one sense, I'll never have to encounter again. Um, but here's another thing that happened at that time, which was one of the facilitators saw that when I was sat up, and around the same time I was having this vision, and I was just very uncomfortable. He came from across the room, and he sat about 5 feet from me. He never looked at me, but I knew that he moved and came across to sit down because he saw what I was going through, and just sat down and kind of was looking off away from me. And when I was going through the hardest time of that journey, I knew that someone was seeing me. I knew that, he was looking out for me, that realizing I was going through a painful experience. And knowing that gave me such a wonderful feeling that while we have to go through things in life by ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
that we are not alone. And that when
Mm-hmm.
we can have the benefit of someone that can see that, we're struggling, even if they can't help us, it's such a good, empowering feeling to know that there's someone else out there who's there for me. And to understand that it gave me power to be able to go through and navigate this by myself, because and then to take that back into life, to know that even at our worst times, if you have love, if you have someone that's looking out for you, you're not alone. And that's such
Mm-hmm.
a wonderful experience. So to bring something wonderful out of something that was so difficult was something that, will stay with me forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it really is no surprise for me to hear that ayahuasca was what brought on one of the more challenging and painful experiences. There's a couple key things here worth presencing. So, like DMT, both NN-DMT and 5-MeO-DMT are quite predictable in the sorts of experiences that they can catalyze.
Hmm.
NN-DMT, which is what you're speaking about and what Shanga is, it's a lot more colorful and vibrant and visionary. And with the right conditions, and the right intention, and the right setting, it can bring you this beautiful godlike experience. And 5-MeO is much more like specific at that. In fact, any of them can do this. But in the realms of DMT, whether or not one believes we can endogenously produce it, and I think it's possible, but regardless, it's it's very accurate and reliable at producing experiences that are of spirit. People meet entities regularly.
Yeah.
And so with ayahuasca, though, you've got a lot more going on there, especially in groups. But one thing I want to presence that's really relevant here is how you mentioned you had never had any sort of relationship or understanding or personal work with the cultural pain body for Jewish people that is the Holocaust,
Hmm.
right? Ayahuasca is very much well known to bring entities and beings to people, but they're usually more simple, like the jaguar or the grandmother spirit or the ancestors that are being called in that particular tribe. But it also is deeply ancestral medicine, personally ancestral. And it's medicine of the DNA in ways we're just starting to understand. And so, whatever you're carrying from your bloodline or your lineage is going to show up at some point. The thing about ayahuasca, I've come to understand through collecting many stories, is that it's kind of got like a progression to it. If someone comes in heavily toxified and with a really poor diet and their body is still pretty much way down, like the physical body, it works there first. And then there's a lots of purging and clearing. And then once you start to open up your body and cleanse your body, you are more available to these deeper soul experiences that go down into the past and these spiritual experiences up out into the future in other realms. And so this is something that's important for people to understand, because a lot of folks out there who are turning into and tuning into this work, they kind of want to go straight for ayahuasca. And like, yeah, held in the right way, it's great. But you need to be prepared to contend with what's going on in your past. And it may not even be your past, your cultural past, your tribal past. This is why it's group medicine. And this is why the indigenous do it in groups. They're all working together to clear their shared joint karma and history. And so if you're coming into a group, like, it's important to be familiar with them and to know who you're sitting with, because you might be bringing in like many lifetimes of shared cultural baggage and trauma. And they're very different medicines entirely. And the general kind of medicine that's coming through these days with the ancestral work, it's grief, it's gloom, it's darkness. There's a lot of things to be atoned for. and to clear up so we can move forward. Like, these are pretty heavy times right now. And this is why it's important to have a really clear calling, like you said, because it's not easy. It's not for everyone. Even some of the like more simple and predictable medicines like DMT or ketamine or MDMA, they can be challenging at times. Far less likely, but they can. And so it takes a certain fortitude and resilience. And there are many ways that that can be gathered and put together. But it's an important conversation to have. Just stepping into the arena of the transpersonal realms or going down to the depths of our psyche and doing some soul excavating is no small task, especially since we're people that haven't been doing it for very long and that need to be doing it in an entirely new way.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Um, a couple things I thought of as you were talking was the first DMT experience. When I came back to the room, I recall two things. I was able to see in the room with my eyes closed, and then I felt my third eye, because we're talking about, where is it produced endogenously? I felt my third eye pumping, and it's exactly where everyone thinks it is, right here in the middle, and it was just pumping, thumping, boom, 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 boom. And for
Mm-hmm.
maybe a half an hour, when I was in the car, someone was driving me home, and I still felt it. So something obviously opened, and maybe that has remained open, will serve me, in other journeys. I don't know, but a very interesting, physical takeaway from that I never experienced, and I believe that's what is happening. That we have this frequency, each of us, and DMT is able to activate that at least for some time. And I think that's been relevant in future journeys after that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, 100%. So where does that leave you now? Like, what is your current path with medicine looking like after all these different experiences, the highs, the lows, the bliss and the gloom? What is your walk now?
My walk now is we are on this wonderful path in life together, and I think I was called at a certain time. What we're seeing in the public is a psychedelic renaissance, of course, which is we are on the right track. We're going in the right direction. Psychedelics is coming back. Laws are changing. We're seeing that here in the U.S., where we have states now that are being able to serve psilocybin. We see some exemptions that are being granted. And I think I was called in 2017 because there was a substantial part of the collective. And I think that I have a role in this. This is my role now. And that is, again, to be very clear, I am making no claims of anything. I I believe that the message is really what is empowering, and that's what's becoming relevant today. And someone told me the other day that Mother Ayahuasca has decided to leave the jungle and to get out more into the mainstream to awaken people so that they can begin this process for themselves. And I think the purpose, and my purpose is, and generally speaking, is to help as many people as I can who feel called, that want to learn this, that want to get on the path, because their own personal journey is also a contribution to the collective. And the more I learn as just one little tiny point of light, combined with a million other people, will raise the consciousness and the vibration of the collective to a point where we will be able to see and embody real change on the Mother Earth together. And I think we are coming out of actually a time of a time of war, a time of separateness, into a time of peace and love and understanding that we are all one. We
Mm-hmm.
come from the same place, we're going to the same place, and the more we can be as one here now today, the happier we are going to be in life for
Mhm.
everybody. And I am here to do my little part into awakening as many people as I can to make that contribution.
Beautifully said. Well, I think that is a perfect segue into talking about what your offerings are out in the world right now with the Star Walker Cafe and the experiences that you're beginning to curate and to cultivate here in Costa Rica and
Yeah.
potentially even in the States.
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on. So my partner in this psychedelic process is William Henry from the hit show Ancient Aliens that airs here in the U.S. and I think all over the world. I think you can find it on Netflix some seasons now. Ancient Aliens, I think it's been in its 16th season. So it's interesting that there aren't many shows that last that long, especially on television, which kind of goes to, I think, the innate power of what this message is. Who are we? What is the
Exactly.
alien
Yeah.
phenomenon, right? It's the message. It's not,
Curiosity.
sure, of course. And then that's natural born in us. Where do we come from? Where are we going? And then part of that question is, who are these aliens and how do they figure in this process? Because I have encountered what we would term as typical alien beings in the psychedelic process, and some beings like the mantis being and dragons and snakes that are maybe not as well known to be as involved in psychedelics, in ayahuasca in particular. So that's part of this educational process. So we have the Star Walker Cafe, where
Hmm.
the Ancient Aliens fans can come, and others who want to learn about religion, what the impact of religion is, and actually how much psychedelics were a part of the origins of many religions. And we've
Hmm.
gotten away from that and an understanding of using those entheogens as part of our spiritual practice. And
Yes.
so that platform is about education and hearing speakers and just kind of understanding more about all the different components of the alien phenomenon and what our origins are and where we're going and who we are as humans. And then to integrate that and offer plant medicine journeys to people where we will be starting in Costa Rica. We have dates that we're going to announce, looks like late August. And this will be our initial journey, one of, I'm hoping, many, many that will offer people access to different medicines in wonderful locations. We're also looking at Mexico and on a lesser extent, where you can experience full-blown psychedelic journeys, at least through us at this point, because of the state of the laws in the U.S. But we can do certain things like here in a magical place in my home state of Arizona, in Sedona, but we have, new laws. Oregon has passed psilocybin. I think they've conducted 8,000 journeys over the last couple of years with unbelievable success. And Colorado has passed psilocybin, and they will be starting, I think, later this year, actually offering journeys. And so I think now we're going to see this process evolve. And one of the main things on my list is to pursue an exemption to be able to serve ayahuasca in Arizona, even
Hmm.
in advance of laws changing, because we know they can take time. A couple of exemptions have been given. There's some litigation about the right to be able to serve the medicine pursuant to certain laws in the U.S., and it's kind of a murky area now that's kind of working its way through the court system. But we're on the right track and we're going in the right direction. So the time of this, resurgence and renaissance of consciousness is certainly upon us. And I think that's what's empowering people like you and what's motivating me to start to get the message out is because the time has finally come.
The time certainly has finally come, and it takes as many people as possible, like you and I, in our roles in these shoes that are doing the good work of sharing what we've experienced
Mhm.
and simply sharing from this objective point of view. This is my story. This is what it has done for me. Here's what challenges I've gone through. Here's what was helpful. Here's what wasn't. And this is how we're going to learn how to help other people. This is how people are going to feel drawn to us, attracted to us, so we can build our cultures, our families, and our tribes. It's not about promotion. And this is where things get a little muddy out there when it's getting wrapped up into capitalism. This is tribal work. This is work that is deeply correlated and historically entwined with spirituality and
Mhm.
religion. And this is the true medicine of it all, is connection. Connection first to ourselves, and then to nature, God, spirit, and then to our families and communities. And when we finally walk through these different thresholds of connection, then we can start impacting change at a much deeper level. And the power of spirit, the power of God, however we connect to it, this is what is going to change. This is what is going to make the shift in the world. And so it is not going to take everyone on the planet to do this. This is why everyone doesn't need to. It just takes enough to achieve this like escape velocity, let's just say, where enough momentum is gained, and then this energy is going to take root. And so I love what you have here. It seems like a great balance. Like the Star Walker community is there to help people lean into their curiosity around who we are, the big questions about like what we're doing here, going well into the realms, of course, of like the ancient aliens, because there's something really
Yeah.
unique about human beings and how we came to these places and why we go through all these amazing arcs of light and dark ages. Which I often find it interesting. Like, why is it? It seems like we're the only kind of species on this planet that has a capacity to live in discord and not in harmony. There's something strange about that, and like all the theories are interesting, but
Right.
yeah, I've definitely had many clients that share with me about their experiences with the mantis people, for example. I wanted to bring
Yeah.
that up, especially with ayahuasca and its patterns. This is what we get to look at. We get to look at patterns and make sense of that. And so you have a platform for people to self-educate and to be curious and to learn, which is paired with a community where you're going to offer experiences to engage and explore these curiosities of self and of origin and of our purpose. And that's a beautifully complementary offering. And so, like, thank you for bringing that to the show. Thank you for letting people know that this is happening. And if people want to reach out to you and connect, what's the best way to follow up with you?
Yeah, I mean, you can come on to the Star Walker Cafe, send us a message. And personally, if people are interested in kind of getting on their own journey and looking for information about medicine, I talk about my experiences. I put my long form mostly on YouTube on the Meru Sky, Meru, which came out of a journey experience, the naming of my channel, which is a story, unto itself. But please, watch the content. If you have questions, I try to answer everybody that has some kind of inquiry or an observation. So I'm here to really use that as a platform to engage.
Amazing. David, thank you for coming onto the show. Looking forward to what's coming next and to what sort of magic we might be able to co-create here in Costa Rica.
Yes, I look forward to it. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on with you.
Mhm.